Some pianists say 1 hour, some say 6 hours, some say 12 hours, but actually it's not really so much about the hours, it's about more about what you do during these hours. So actually, how much should you practice and how should you practice? I made videos about how you should practice now. It's one about how much should you practice. You will see this is depending on many factors and it's not a simple answer. So I remember asking, a colleague of mine was asking Christian Zimmermann after a concert how much he practiced, and he said he practiced 16 hours a day when he was younger, and now less. Then I made a video, by the way, on how much Xifra was practicing, Georg Xifra, and I tried to do the same. I tried to practice 10 hours, and I know it's very difficult to get to 10 hours and to do good work. Now, of course, it depends what you call practicing. Maybe, if you go in your practice room at 8 and you come out of it at 6 p.m., well, you were 10 hours in your practice room, but what did you do in the room? Were you really practicing every minute, or were you busy with music for 10 hours? That's another question, right? Then, for example, Hélène Grimaud said she practiced 2 hours a day. That's enough, I think. Chopin was saying the same kind of stuff. Students should practice 2 hours a day. That's enough. Liszt practiced a lot, I think, when he was younger. He was a bit obsessed at some time and practiced also all day, but not only practicing, he was reading books, like practicing exercise and stuff like this. What else? Like when you see competition stuff, for example, Chopin competition last time, I saw a short of someone asking how much they practice, and everyone has different hours. They go from 4, 6 to 8 hours, but that's before competitions, not something you would do all your life. And also, I guess, in the beginning of your career, you have a lot of stuff to prove and you have a lot of repertoire to build up, and maybe later, if you have 6 years of career, you don't need to practice all these hours anymore because you mostly play stuff again you played before, and you need to just get them ready for the concert, so this would need less practice. Horowitz probably practiced a lot when he was young, but then there's this video where you can see him practicing 15 minutes, and he said, I practiced a lot today, and his wife said, you practiced 15 minutes only. So I think it's a wide range, and it's not a clear answer how much you should practice. And actually, so like longevity of practicing, I think, is more important. So this pianist, this typical example I gave you, practiced many hours, focused. They were good at practicing, obviously, otherwise they would not get this level, but also since many years. Also, one part of the answer could be studies. There are studies about how much you should practice and how much people practice. And I didn't read the studies, but I had summaries about, and it basically says that it's not really the 8 hours that matters. It's more how you practice, like how focused you are, how much are you driven to solve a problem every time you repeat something. So repetition is important, but when you repeat something, you should always have a goal. You should think of, now I will do this again, but I will try to improve this and try to do it. And that's actually quite exhausting. Like very focused and efficient practice is very exhausting. So if you feel exhausted after 1 hour practice, that's one of the signs probably that you had a good practice. If you don't, and you just played the piece through 10 times and were thinking about what you will eat later, that's not a very efficient practice. And then doesn't matter how many hours you do of this, it will not get you very far, right? So as I said, practicing is difficult. It's making you tired, it's exhausting. And mostly I would say the answer will lay between 3-4 hours a day. I think if you take an average and you ask a lot of people, you will always come to these 3-4 hours as an average. Now this 3-4 hours is good if you split them during the day. That's the best way to do it. Like if you do 2 hours in the morning, 1 hour after lunch, and 1 hour in the evening, that's your 4 hours, and you will have rest in between, which is very good because then your body can rest, your hands, your back, everything. You can stretch, you can eat. The fact also that you rest your brain, of course, very important. And then the danger of practicing too much or too much at once, doing 4 hours with no stop, for example, is of course injury and stopping being efficient after a while, because your focus can be at peak for a short time and after a while it gets less efficient. That's something you would have noticed if you practice like 1 or 2 hours. In the beginning, you are very fresh, you're very motivated, you're practicing the same thing, you repeat, you improve, you stop and everything. And after a while, you stop making progress, you feel it's blocking, and that's where your concentration is getting too low or lower. That's where you should stop and either make a 10-minute break or 2 hours break and come to it later. But if you want to be sure, long breaks, of course, are better than short breaks because you have more recuperation. So that's one of the best way probably to practice. So the problem is if you repeat something too much, you will get tired and you will start to make mistakes. Also, if you repeat mistakes too often, you are not practicing, you're not making progress, you're just reinforcing the mistakes. So that's quite important too. So there is a risk of over-practicing something or over-practicing in a day. You need to be consistent, you need to have a good practicing routine, but over the years, over the months, like every week, every month, every year, that's right. So if you are pushing it too much at some time, you'll probably not be able to keep this in a long time. So that's another thing to think about when you practice. How many hours can I do the next 30 years or something like this? And without getting, that's something what I noticed very strongly when I did this experiment with 10 hours of practicing. At the end of the week, I was like at 7, 8, 9 hours of practicing the same stuff, and either I tried to put some variation in it because I did side reading, I did practicing new pieces, I did practicing old pieces, I did doing exercise and stuff like this. I tried to practice without piano too, but after a while you just, if you do too much, you just cannot see the piece anymore. You just don't want to hear the piece anymore. So there are ways to avoid this, of course, because people tell me this after sometimes 20 minutes, they are a bit annoyed to repeat the same stuff. So that's another story. This you should learn to be able to just focus not on listening to music, but focusing on small progress. And there the boredom gets away from hearing the same things 20 times in a row, because that's necessary. But practicing 10 hours the same repertoire for weeks or months can get very boring, and you can get annoyed by the music you're playing. There are people like Volodos, for example, who said he's not practicing the pieces until just a bit before the concert. He's mostly improvising in the style of the piece or the composer he's playing, and then he learns the piece a bit before the concert, and he's doing this to keep this freshness, this kind of spontaneous way of playing the piece. Now, of course, not everyone can do this, and I don't know if it's true, but I think the message is clear. It's just saying you don't want to over-practice a piece because it will get mechanical. You will stop having a fresh look on the piece, and you will probably get bored by the piece too. Then, of course, there's this famous thing of if I skip a day, it's the end of the world. Well, yes and no. Like, of course, practicing as many days in a row is important because if you don't practice for 2 weeks or 3 days, you will start losing a bit what you did, since it's mostly muscle memories and stuff like this. This kind of things tends to fade away with time if you don't reinforce them. But of course, it should not also be a stress to skip a day. You can skip a day sometimes, or you can decide, okay, I want to have a rest day today and relax a bit, because that's probably also beneficial for your motivation, which is an important factor, like we just said. So what I suggest mostly for beginners is, like, if you skip a day, try to do double next day, then you still have your amount of practice and you will have a good feeling about yourself and you will not feel guilty. And sometimes you just take 2 weeks of holidays. You go on holidays, there's no piano, just take it. But of course, be careful, there are limits to this. Like, I remember I took 1 month holiday once in my life from piano, and when I came back, it was difficult to get back to piano. Like, my muscles were not used to play piano anymore. My back, my position, everything was difficult. I struggled memorizing again. That's another stuff. If you don't memorize stuff regularly, this goes away too. Like, I'm feeling this now when I don't memorize pieces very often anymore. When I try to memorize one, it's getting more difficult. So you need, it's a sport, it's like a high level sport. You need to keep kind of like maintenance, like a certain level to be able to still function. So by the way, if you want to improve in practicing, I created an app for this that's helping one, reading notes, improving reading notes, that's one of the main problems. Rhythm too, that's one of the main problems too. And then the third one is motivation, like I just said, and practicing. What's helped with practicing is tracking your practice. So if you have also a history of how much you practice each piece, like you will see in the app, you can have an idea, okay, I practiced too much exercise, I should practice a bit more this or opposite, or I didn't practice this piece enough, or you can just be wondering how much hours do I need to practice a piece. And this you can see in the app. And also like having your statistics of the week, the month, the year, you just have an idea of how much you practice, and you can decide to change this or to get you can be happy about it because you just realize you are practicing an average of 2 hours a day. Also, it's difficult to estimate average if you don't have the real numbers, because estimation of people without tracking the stuff mostly is very bad. Like it's too high or too low, and people really struggle to have an idea of how much they really do. So there again, there are studies showing that tracking your practice helps. And then of course in the app you have like gamification. This motivates too, because you are competing against other people. There's a lot of tips, there's a lot of helps, and it's improving a lot every day, every week to help people, musicians or music learners to get better. So download the app. Its link is in biography. Try it out. There is a free version, and if you want to get more stuff, there is a premium version where you have to pay. It's not so expensive. It's $7 a month. So if you want to practice an hour, it's important that you try to practice an hour efficiently. It would be better to do 1 hour very efficiently than 3 hours half efficiently, of course. So what do you do to get efficient? You repeat stuff, you practice very short parts, so like 1 bar or 4 bars. You try to start where the problem is, so just before where the problem is. You don't start from the beginning to solve a problem that's 10 bars further. That's one of the stuff I said in other videos too. You practice separate hands sometimes. Like I know pieces by heart since years, but sometimes separate hands is gone, the memory of separate hands is gone, and then you just re-practice separate hands. You do the left hand to see how it's working, you have to rememorize it a bit, you discover new problems just in the left hand, and say with the right hand. When there are difficult passages, you try to do this groups technique I'm explaining in other videos too. So some call this rhythms. I'm not a huge fan of rhythms, but the group technique is actually good. So instead of doing like, let's just take a scale, you would do like, or stuff like this, or if you have an etude, that's the group technique, or per 2, etc., or per 8, etc. So you try to invent exercise in your practice. You try to solve problems. You identify the problems first. If the problem is a jump, you do an exercise for the jump. Like you try to have just the jump or just the note before the jump and after the jump, and you let the other notes away. If it's in the left hand, you isolate the left hand, etc. So that's what I call being practical, right? And the other thing that's quite difficult is, well, that's already difficult, is to constantly monitor yourself and be critical and think what's not good there, what am I not happy with, and then what exercise or solution can I invent to make this improve? And then doing it, of course, you have to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the number it needs to get better. Another example I took another piece last time, and I just took the metronome, I put it at 80. I played it at 80, being 100% control. Then I put it at 81. I did it again, 81, then 82, 83. And I did every number like this until I blocked. And then I knew, okay, that's my limit, and I want to get like 20 numbers higher. So I will practice the groups again. I will practice slow. I will practice hand separate. And then I will do this thing again with the metronome to see if I get a bit higher. Just to increase, if you increase the speed slowly, it's easier because you repeat each time. And at the end of the time, you have played it 40 times in a row, right? So it will get better. So also, like one last stuff I wanted to say is, you repeat stuff, and each time you repeat, you should try to improve something. And you should be critical and able to think, did I improve it? Yes or no? Yes, okay, I do it again. I try to improve another stuff. No, I do it again. I try to improve the stuff I wanted to improve, right? That's important. There's, by the way, a great book from Heinrich Neuhaus. He was the teacher of Sviatoslav Richter and other people. And I have it in French. I read this many years ago. It's on a lot of stuff. It's on pedal, it's on fingerings, it's on practice. And one of the stuff he said is, you have to imagine the sound before you play. So means many things. It means you should have a projection in your head, or you should have an idea in your head of how you want to sound what you play. So also just how you want, it can be the speed, for example, how fast or how articulate you want it to be. And then you should try to work into this direction, right? So it means you should know what you want to hear before you try to practice, not just playing and waiting that something happened and let's see where it brings me, right? That's not the idea. So that's also, I guess, why some pianists say you practice away from the piano. because practicing on the piano will probably tending to play and wait something happen, while when you're not at the piano you can hear the piece in your head, which actually is important too. You should be able to hear this music in your head and you can imagine how you want to hear it. Now that's also helping sometimes if you listen to recordings, but there can be a bit dangerous because you would probably be tempted to copy the recording. But listening to recordings, thinking of, oh yeah, I see how he did it, now this can help me to find how I do it or how I want to do it. That's a good way to listen to recordings, just to be able to hear it on the stereo or hear it in your head. So the practicing without the piano and hearing and the sound come first, in my opinion, means this, like you should be able to hear what you want in your head, what you want to hear on the piano, and work in this direction. Try the book. So of course, how much you practice also depends on the level you have. When you are a beginner, you don't practice 6 hours a day. It is like nonsense. When you're a kid, also not, because when you're a kid, your attention is much lower. So as a beginner or a kid, I would say try with 10-20 minutes a day. Again, not every day, but try to have as many days in a row as you can and sometimes have a break. 10-20 minutes. And try to be able to get this goal, because also if you can do this, you will be happy. If you fail if you say I want to practice 2 hours a day from the beginning and you fail, you will be unhappy, you will give up. It's also like a way to motivate yourself to be able to put goals that you can succeed doing, right? So 10-20 minutes for a beginner, and if you do it for 2-3 months in a row and you see you did almost every day 10-20 minutes and you made progress, then just increase it and try to see if that's okay. And if you don't manage, go lower again, but try to get the regularity. Again, it's the long run and it's the regularity that's important. For intermediate, you can go up to 1-2 hours a day. Depends how much time you have in the day, of course. And then for professionals, well, it's also a different story for professionals because they need to prepare concerts. It's mostly a lot of repertoire. They need to learn a lot of repertoire. When you're in the conservatory, you need to learn concertos, sonatas, and stuff like this. So this just takes a lot of time to memorize, for example. And since there is like 1 hour repertoire where you don't work on 1 hour program for a concert, you have more work to do than on a 10-minute sonata, for example, from an intermediate level, right? So yeah, and that's another step as a professional or as when you study conservatory, you have to learn also to divide your work, like do some technique, do some sight reading, practice on memorizing these pieces. You don't practice pieces completely most of the time. You practice bits of pieces where you know that's difficult. So you do the 3 difficult passages of this piece and then you go to this. And also this changing and doing different stuff helps you not to get bored and helps also keep the focus and attention higher, and do breaks, of course. So to summarize, I would say it's not so much about how many hours. Of course, if you have very focused hours, more of them will be good. But if you cannot focus correctly, then more will not help, right? Or will not be very helpful. It's more about the quality, and if you have the quality, then of course more is good, but there is also a limit on how much more is good. Le mieux est l'ennemi du bien. It means better is the enemy of good. So sometimes good is good enough, and if you try better, it can get worse, right? You can make it worse by trying more. So you have to find the right amount of hours. You have to be able to actually, what counts also is the quality of what's coming out. If you can play a Prokofiev sonata or a Haydn sonata after 40 hours of work, well, then the job is done, right? You don't need to do 80 on it, and you will not get even better. If it's fine, it's fine, right? If you can play it very well, it's fine. Then there are other stuff that will help getting better at playing that's not really linked on how many hours you stay on the piano. For example, being curious about other arts will help understand music. Having a life, actually, and experience life, having emotions, friends, love stories, sadness, all this stuff also helps to be a better musician, because you just understand music and its message and its emotions inside better. Little prodigies mostly have as problem is they are very good at one thing, but they are just not good at life or other stuff in life, and then they struggle to understand and to go further, because as an accomplished musician, you should be able to express what's in the music, and if you didn't live anything in your life, you cannot really express it, or it will sound fake or artificial, right? So there are other stuff like read biographies, like actually do sport, be interested in mathematics, in physics and everything. It opens your brain and then it helps you to be more efficient in what you do. So at the end of the day, it's also not so much how much time you spend on the instrument, but many other hours doing other stuff is important too, right? Hope this helped. Give me your opinion. Tell me in the comments how much you practice. I will be curious to see how much some people can practice, because I have students actually who for some weeks practice like 7 hours a day, and I was really impressed. I have students who practice like 2-3 hours a day for a very long time. I have students who don't practice. Like there's a lot of different stuff. I have students who practice like, I don't know, 20 minutes a day and have good results too. So yeah, like I'm just curious how much people on average practice, and yeah, hope you like it and see you next video.